The Galactic Council chamber was designed to inspire awe. It succeeded. Suspended in orbit above the capital world of Aurelian Prime, the structure stretched across kilometers of polished crystal metal, its vast circular hall capable of housing representatives from more than 300 starfaring civilizations. Entire mountains could have fit beneath its domed ceiling. Stars shimmered through transparent sections of the chamber walls, creating the illusion that the galaxy itself was attending the meeting. For most species, standing within the council chamber was the greatest honor imaginable. For Ambassador Daniel Hayes of Earth, it felt more like standing in the center of an execution arena. Rows upon rows of alien delegates filled the massive amphitheater. Some towered over their seats. Others floated in anti-gravity fields. Several communicated through shifting patterns of light instead of speech. Yet despite their differences, they all seemed united by one thing: amusement. At humanity's expense. The petition before us is absurd. The booming voice belonged to High Chancellor Vorthak of the Drakari Imperium. The reptilian giant rose from his seat, golden scales glistening beneath the chamber lights. His species controlled thousands of worlds. His military fleet alone was larger than the economies of some civilizations. Vorthak looked directly toward the small human delegation. Earth requests full council membership. A low wave of laughter spread through the chamber. Daniel remained silent. Vorthak continued. A species that has possessed faster-than-light travel for less than 2 centuries. More laughter. A species controlling fewer than 30 inhabited systems. The laughter grew louder. A species whose entire military fleet could fit inside a single Drakari battle formation. This time several delegates openly applauded. Daniel calmly folded his hands behind his back. His expression never changed. That seemed to annoy them more than if he had argued. The Chancellor narrowed his eyes. Tell me, human, why should Earth be considered our equal? Hundreds of eyes turned toward Daniel. Some curious. Most mocking. A few openly hostile. The human ambassador slowly stepped forward. We are not asking to be considered equal. The chamber quieted slightly. Daniel's voice remained calm. We are asking to be judged fairly. For a moment there was silence. Then another delegate laughed. A harsh metallic sound echoed from the eastern section of the chamber. Representative Kex of the Syndicate Collective leaned forward. His cybernetic body reflected the chamber lights. Fairly. His mechanical voice buzzed. Your species contributes almost nothing to galactic security. Another delegate joined in. The humans are traders. Another. Tourists. Another. Entertainers. A burst of laughter erupted again. Daniel listened quietly. Every insult. Every joke. Every dismissal. He had heard them all before. Humans were considered pleasant. Creative. Adaptable. Even charming. But powerful? No. Never powerful. Most of the galaxy viewed humanity as harmless newcomers who had arrived late to history. The younger species. The inexperienced species. The species protected by older civilizations. The irony would have been amusing if it wasn't so predictable. Councillor Seren of the Valari Dominion raised a slender blue hand. Unlike many others, she wasn't laughing. She studied the human carefully. Ambassador Hayes. Daniel nodded respectfully. Councillor, you've heard the concerns. Her silver eyes narrowed. Why does Earth maintain such a small military presence despite possessing the economic capacity for expansion? A subtle shift moved through the chamber. It was a reasonable question. Perhaps the first reasonable question of the day. Daniel felt dozens of gazers locking onto him. Waiting. Watching. Searching. For the first time, genuine curiosity appeared among the delegates. Daniel chose his words carefully. Because humanity learned a lesson long ago. Seren tilted her head. What lesson? The human smiled slightly. A small smile. Almost invisible. Yet somehow it caused several delegates to exchange uncertain glances. The most dangerous weapon is not the one everyone can see. Silence. The answer hung in the air. Not aggressive. Not threatening. Yet strangely unsettling. Vorthak scoffed. Cryptic nonsense. The laughter returned. But not as strongly as before. A few delegates remained thoughtful. Watching. Wondering. Daniel noticed. Good. Let them wonder. The truth was simple. Everything the galaxy believed about humanity had been carefully cultivated. Earth's leaders had never corrected the misconceptions, never bragged, never displayed their full capabilities, never revealed what existed beyond public records, because history had taught humanity something every great power eventually forgot. Visibility invited challenges, underestimation created advantages, and advantages saved lives. But none of that could be said aloud. Not here. Not yet. The debate continued for another hour. Arguments, votes, political maneuvering, the usual theater of galactic governance. Then it happened. Without warning, every light in the chamber flickered. The massive holographic display suspended above the council floor suddenly vanished. A sharp electronic tone echoed through the hall. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound was unfamiliar. Delegates looked around in confusion. Council systems never malfunctioned. Never. The tone sounded again. Longer this time. Louder. More urgent. A moment later, every communication console in the chamber illuminated bright crimson. Conversations stopped instantly. The laughter disappeared. Even Chancellor Vorthak froze. At the center of the chamber, the council emblem dissolved. In its place appeared a flashing symbol that few living beings had ever seen. An emergency priority code. Maximum classification. Galaxy-wide threat level. For the first time that day, fear entered the room. And as the mysterious signal continued pulsing across every screen in the chamber, Ambassador Daniel Hayes slowly lifted his eyes toward the display. Because unlike everyone else, he recognized the code. And that frightened him more than anything. The crimson warning symbol pulsed across the council chamber. Again. 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 No one spoke. The silence was almost unnatural. Moments earlier, the chamber had been filled with laughter, political posturing, and smug confidence. Now hundreds of representatives sat frozen in their seats, staring at the flashing emergency alert. A chill spread through the enormous hall. Council President Alaron rose slowly from his elevated platform. His 4 silver eyes scanned the display. Identify the source. His voice sounded calm. It wasn't. Everyone could hear the strain underneath. Several technicians rushed to nearby consoles. Streams of data flooded the chamber's central holographic display. Coordinates. Transmissions. Emergency requests. Military reports. Then the first message appeared. Priority distress signal Carthan border system. A crackling recording filled the chamber. Static. Explosions. Screams. Then a terrified voice. This is Defense Command Carthan. The transmission broke apart. Returned. Broken again. They came from nowhere. A loud impact echoed in the background. Metal screamed. People shouted. The voice returned. We require immediate reinforcements. Pause. Heavy breathing. Then words that made the chamber colder. Our fleet is gone. Silence. The recording ended. Several delegates exchanged confused looks. Carthan wasn't some isolated colony. It was one of the strongest military systems along the outer frontier. The Drakari alone maintained hundreds of warships there. High Chancellor Vorthak frowned. Impossible. The word echoed through the hall. Then another transmission appeared. And another. And another. Suddenly, the display filled with emergency alerts. Entire sectors flashing red. System after system. World after world. Distress signals were arriving faster than the council computers could organize them. A technician's voice trembled. There are too many. What do you mean too many? Demanded President Alaron. The technician swallowed. We are receiving thousands. The chamber erupted. Thousands. That was impossible. No disaster could spread this quickly. No invasion force could move at such speed. No civilization possessed enough military strength. Yet the alerts continued arriving. One after another. One after another. Like a galaxy-wide heartbeat of terror. Then the map appeared. The enormous hologram above the chamber transformed. Known space materialized. Hundreds of colored territories. Trade routes. Military sectors. Population centers. The familiar map every council member had studied their entire lives. Then a dark stain appeared at the edge. Small at first. Almost insignificant. A single black mark. Several delegates leaned forward. Confused. The stain expanded. One system disappeared. Then another. Then 10 more. Gasps echoed throughout the chamber. The black region continued growing, consuming star systems as if they had never existed. Entire sectors vanished from communication. The advance was terrifyingly organized.
Terrifyingly fast.
And utterly unstoppable. "What are we looking at?" whispered Councillor Saren. Nobody answered. Even military analysts appeared horrified. Then a new voice emerged from the chamber speakers. Artificial. Cold. Emotionless. Unknown fleet designation detected. Pause. Estimated vessel count. The computer stopped. Recalculating. Delegates exchanged nervous looks. The computer almost never hesitated. Then it spoke again. Unable to determine fleet size. For the first time that day, genuine fear entered the eyes of High Chancellor Vorthak.
Impossible.
The words sounded weaker this time. Much weaker. A military officer suddenly appeared via emergency hologram. His uniform was burned. Blood covered part of his face. The chamber recognized him instantly. Fleet Admiral Corvin, commander of the Outer Defense Forces, one of the most respected military leaders in the galaxy. He looked exhausted, terrified, and somehow older than he had hours earlier. "My lords." His voice shook. The sight alone frightened everyone. Corvin wasn't known for fear. He was famous for courage. If he looked terrified. What had he seen? President Alaron leaned forward. "Admiral, report." Corvin remained silent for several seconds, as though searching for words. Finally he spoke. "They call themselves the Void Dominion." The chamber listened. No one moved. No one breathed. Corvin continued. They emerged from regions beyond map space. A murmur spread through the delegates. Beyond map space? Nothing lived beyond map space. At least that was what everyone believed. "We engaged them at Carthan." His jaw tightened. "We lost." Vorthak immediately interrupted. "How many enemy ships?" The admiral stared at him. A haunted expression crossed his face. "We don't know." The answer made no sense. Every fleet could be counted. Every military force could be measured. Corvin shook his head. "You don't understand." His voice dropped. "We never reached their main fleet." The chamber became silent again. A feeling of dread settled over everyone. What destroyed Carthan was merely the vanguard. Several delegates visibly paled. The vanguard. That force had annihilated one of the strongest frontier defenses ever assembled. How could it merely be a scouting force? Then came the worst revelation yet. Corvin activated a recording. Ancient star maps appeared. Unknown sectors. Forgotten coordinates. Regions beyond council borders. Areas no one monitored. Areas no one cared about. Dozens of symbols blinked red. Then disappeared. One by one. Extinguished. "What are those systems?" asked Saren. The admiral answered quietly. "Civilizations." The chamber froze. Civilizations that existed beyond our borders. The hologram shifted again. Entire species. Names no delegate recognized. Governments. Worlds. Empires. All gone. Erased. Destroyed. The realization hit like a physical blow. The galaxy wasn't witnessing the beginning of an invasion. They were witnessing the continuation of one. The Void Dominion had already been at war. For years. Perhaps decades. And nobody had known. Nobody had survived long enough to warn them. Councillor Saren slowly sat down. Her hands trembled. "How many?" Corvin's answer came immediately. "Too many." No one laughed now. No one mocked weaker species. No one argued politics. The illusion of safety that had existed for centuries was cracking apart. Then another alarm sounded. Louder. Sharper. More urgent. Every display in the chamber flashed crimson. Military tracking systems updated simultaneously. The holographic map zoomed inward. Toward the center of known space. Toward the heart of civilization. Toward the place every delegate called home. Toward the Galactic Capital. A technician stared at the data. His face turned pale. "President." Alaron looked up. "What is it?" The technician swallowed hard. Then whispered the words every soul in the chamber feared. "They've changed course." The chamber waited. Nobody wanted to hear the rest. The technician forced himself to continue. The enemy fleet is heading directly toward the Galactic Capital. And for the first time in centuries. The Galactic Council understood that extinction was no longer a theory. It was coming. For several long seconds after the announcement, nobody spoke. The Galactic Council chamber, normally the loudest political arena in known space, had fallen completely silent. The silence was worse than panic. It was disbelief. Hundreds of delegates stared at the glowing star map suspended above the chamber. The black stain representing the Void Dominion continued advancing. System after system vanished. Each disappearance was accompanied by a faint pulse of red light. Each pulse represented millions of lives. Entire worlds. Entire cultures. Entire histories. Gone. The realization settled over the room like poison. This was not a border conflict. This was not a territorial dispute. This was extinction. President Alaron slowly lowered himself into his chair. For the first time in decades, he looked old. Very old. Mobilize all available fleets. The order echoed through the chamber. Military officers immediately began transmitting commands across known space. Communication arrays lit up. Holograms appeared. Fleet commanders responded from distant sectors. Thousands of warships began moving. The galaxy's greatest powers were finally preparing for war. Yet despite the activity, fear remained. Because nobody knew whether any of it would matter. High Chancellor Vorthak stood tall before the central display. His golden scales reflected the crimson emergency lighting. Hours earlier he had mocked humanity. Now his attention was entirely focused on survival. The Drakari Imperium commits fleet groups 1 through 9. Gasps erupted. Those fleets represented nearly half of Drakari military power. Even rival species appeared shocked. Vorthak continued. We will establish a defensive barrier across the capital corridor. Several delegates visibly relaxed. The Drakari military was legendary. If anyone could stop the invasion, surely it was them. Surely. Fleet Admiral Corvin remained silent. That silence was troubling. Councillor Saren noticed. You disagree. Corvin looked toward her. His expression revealed everything. No. The Admiral swallowed. I hope I'm wrong. Nobody liked that answer. Not even a little. Minutes later the first battle reports arrived. The chamber immediately focused on the incoming feed. A live tactical display appeared above the floor. Dozens of Drakari battleships emerged from hyperspace. Massive vessels. Heavily armored. Bristling with enough firepower to devastate planets. For centuries they had been symbols of security. Symbols of power. Symbols of dominance. The fleet advanced confidently. Then sensors detected the enemy. A hush swept through the chamber. At first the Void Dominion ships appeared ordinary. Dark. Angular. Featureless. Then the scale became clear. 1 ship. Then 10. Then hundreds. Then thousands. The tactical computers struggled to keep up. Military analysts exchanged nervous looks. The numbers didn't make sense. More enemy vessels kept appearing. Like an endless ocean emerging from darkness. The Drakari commander opened a transmission. Enemy formation identified. His voice remained steady. Preparing engagement. The battle began. Energy beams streaked across space. Missiles launched. Railguns fired. Entire formations unleashed coordinated attacks. The display became a storm of light. Several council members applauded. The Drakari assault was devastating. Any known enemy fleet would have been shattered. Then the impossible happened. The Void Dominion kept advancing. Unaffected. Unstoppable. Council technicians zoomed the display. The chamber collectively held its breath. Drakari weapons were hitting. Direct impacts. Confirmed impacts. Yet enemy vessels continued moving. No damage.
No slowing. No hesitation.
As though the attacks meant nothing. What am I looking at? Whispered one delegate. Nobody answered. Because nobody knew. The enemy returned fire. 1 beam. Just one. A brilliant spear of dark violet energy crossed the battlefield. 3 Drakari battleships disappeared instantly. Not destroyed. Gone. Simply erased from existence. Shock rippled through the chamber. Another beam. 5 more ships vanished. Then dozens. Then hundreds. The tactical display became chaos. Warning symbols flooded every screen.
Fleet formation collapsed.
Communication channels erupted with distress calls. Shields failing. We can't stop them. Requesting reinforcements. They're inside our formation. The voices overlapped. Screaming. Panicking. Dying. Several delegates looked away. Others couldn't. They watched as the galaxy's strongest military force was dismantled in real time. Minutes passed. Then came the final report. The surviving Drakari commander appeared on screen. His bridge burned behind him. Smoke filled the air. Crew members carried wounded personnel through corridors. His eyes were hollow. Defeated. Fleet Group 3 destroyed. Pause. Fleet Group 4 destroyed. Another pause. Longer this time. Then the words nobody expected to hear. We are retreating. The transmission ended. High Chancellor Vorthak remained frozen. The chamber stared at him. At the ruler whose fleets had never lost a major engagement. Whose empire had dominated military affairs for centuries. He looked smaller now. Much smaller. The failures multiplied. The Valari deployed their defense network. Destroyed. The Carthan Union activated planetary shields. Bypassed. The Syndicate Collective unleashed autonomous war swarms. Annihilated. Every strategy failed. Every weapon failed. Every fleet failed. Hours earlier these civilizations had mocked humanity for possessing a small military. Now their greatest military achievements looked meaningless. One by one, confidence disappeared. One by one, arrogance died. The realization spread through the chamber like wildfire. There was no answer. No secret weapon. No hidden reserve fleet. No miracle strategy. Nothing. Councillor Saren slowly rose. Her normally composed face revealed fear. Raw fear. What are they? The question hung in the air. Nobody answered. Fleet Admiral Corvin finally spoke. His voice was barely above a whisper. I don't think we are asking the right question. Every eye turned toward him. The veteran commander stared at the advancing black stain on the map. Then he delivered the truth everyone dreaded. The question is not what they are. Silence. The question is whether anything can stop them. The room became deathly quiet. Because everyone already knew the answer. Nothing they had tried had worked. Nothing they possessed appeared capable of working. And the Void Dominion had not even slowed down. Not once. Not anywhere. Not ever. The impossible truth finally settled over the Galactic Council. No known military could stop the invasion. No known civilization could survive it. The galaxy was losing. And it wasn't even close. Fear spread openly now. Delegates argued. Some demanded evacuation. Others demanded surrender. A few simply sat in stunned silence. Watching their future collapse. Watching civilization unravel. Watching hope disappear. Amid the chaos, one figure remained calm. Ambassador Daniel Hayes. The human. The representative they had laughed at only hours earlier. He sat quietly at the edge of the chamber. Observing. Listening. Thinking. Councillor Saren noticed him first. Then others. Slowly, the attention of the room shifted. The human stood. Not dramatically. Not arrogantly. Simply stood. The arguments faded. The shouting stopped. Something about his calmness felt strange. Almost unsettling. As though he knew something they didn't. Daniel glanced around the chamber. At frightened rulers. Defeated admirals. Desperate politicians. Then he asked a single question. Do you require assistance? Do you require assistance? The question lingered in the air. Simple. Polite. Calm. Yet it struck the chamber harder than any weapon. For several seconds, nobody answered. Hundreds of delegates stared at Ambassador Daniel Hayes. The human stood quietly beneath the massive holographic map of the dying frontier. Red warning symbols continued flashing across the display. Entire systems were disappearing. Millions were in danger. And somehow the human looked calmer than anyone else in the room. Then someone laughed. A short, sharp sound. Representative Kex of the Syndicate Collective. The metallic alien leaned back in his chair and shook his head. Assistance? Several delegates joined him. Not because they found the situation amusing, because the suggestion seemed absurd. A few hours ago, humanity had been mocked as one of the weakest military powers in known space. Now they were offering help against an enemy that had crushed the strongest fleets in the galaxy. Kex pointed a cybernetic finger toward Daniel. Your entire navy would not survive 10 minutes against the Void Dominion. A few nervous chuckles followed. Weak. Forced. Unconvincing. The laughter died quickly, because nobody truly believed their own superiority anymore. Not after what they had witnessed. Not after watching the Drakari fleets burn. Daniel didn't react. He simply waited. Patiently. As if he had all the time in the universe. That unsettled people. Councillor Saren noticed it immediately. Fear was consuming the chamber. Everyone was desperate. Everyone except the human. Why? What did he know? What exactly are you offering, Ambassador? She asked. Daniel looked toward her. His expression remained unreadable. A chance. The answer frustrated several delegates. Speak clearly. Snapped another representative. We don't have time for riddles. No, Daniel agreed quietly. We don't. The room fell silent again. Something in his voice had changed. The confidence wasn't arrogance. It wasn't bravado. It sounded more like certainty. And certainty was dangerous, especially when everyone else was afraid. President Alaron leaned forward. What are you proposing? Daniel glanced toward the enormous tactical display. The black stain representing the Void Dominion continued expanding. Another border system vanished. Another billion lives potentially lost. The room watched. Waiting. Daniel finally answered. Allow me to contact Earth. The chamber erupted. Immediately. Dozens of delegates began speaking at once. Contact Earth for what? Evacuation assistance? Refugee support? Medical aid? Some still couldn't imagine humanity offering anything military. That realization did not escape Daniel. Neither did it escape Saren. The Valari counselor studied him carefully. Every answer he gave seemed incomplete, as though he were revealing only what was necessary. No more. No less. Fleet Admiral Corvin spoke next. What happens if we authorize this transmission? Daniel met the old commander's gaze. For the first time, genuine respect appeared in the human's eyes. Corvin had earned that much. He had seen reality before the others. He had accepted uncomfortable truths. Then Earth will be informed. The answer sounded harmless, almost disappointingly ordinary. Yet something about it caused Corvin's expression to tighten. Informed of what? Daniel paused. A strange silence followed. When he finally spoke, his words felt carefully chosen. That the scenario we feared has arrived. The chamber froze. Several delegates exchanged confused looks. Feared? What scenario? Nobody had mentioned prior knowledge. Nobody had mentioned preparation. Yet the human had. Only briefly. Only enough to raise questions. Councillor Saren leaned forward. You expected this? Daniel didn't answer immediately. That alone was answer enough. A ripple of unease moved through the room. The Void Dominion had appeared from beyond known space. An impossible threat. An unimaginable enemy. And somehow Earth seemed less surprised than everyone else. Why? How? What had humanity discovered? Before anyone could ask another question, a new battle report arrived. The chamber lights dimmed. A tactical feed opened automatically. The 2nd Valari Defense Fleet. 120 warships. Gone. Destroyed in less than 7 minutes. Silence returned. The reality of the situation crushed every remaining argument. Every minute wasted meant more worlds lost. More deaths. More systems consumed. President Alaron slowly rose from his seat. His voice sounded exhausted. If Earth possesses information that may help us survive. He swallowed. Then withholding it would be criminal. Daniel nodded once. I agree. The president stared at him. Very well. The chamber became still. Every delegate watched. Every camera focused on the human ambassador. The fate of civilizations seemed to hang on the next few moments. Alaron took a breath. You are granted authority. The words echoed throughout the hall. Make your transmission. Daniel did not celebrate. Did not smile. did not appear relieved. Instead, he walked calmly toward a secured communication console. The same steady pace. The same composed expression. As though this moment had been anticipated long ago. As though humanity had already rehearsed it. The thought sent a chill through Councillor Saren. Daniel reached the terminal. The system recognized his diplomatic credentials. Access granted. The chamber watched every movement. He entered a series of encrypted authentication codes. One layer. Then another. Then another. Even Council intelligence systems failed to identify the protocols being used. Whispers spread. What level of encryption is that? I've never seen anything like it. Neither have I. The final authorization screen appeared. Daniel looked at it for several seconds. His face revealed nothing. Yet deep inside, he felt something he had hoped never to feel again. Disappointment. Not fear. Not panic. Disappointment. Because humanity had spent centuries preparing for a possibility everyone prayed would never happen. And now that possibility was here. The human ambassador slowly placed his hand on the console. Then he transmitted a message to Earth. Only 2 words. 2 simple words. Words that vanished into the stars. Words that would change the fate of the galaxy. Protocol Atlas. The transmission took less than a second. 2 words. Protocol Atlas. Yet the moment the message left the Council communication array, something changed. Not in the chamber. Not immediately. But somewhere far beyond the walls of the Galactic Capital. Far beyond the frightened delegates. Far beyond the advancing Void Dominion. Something ancient had just been awakened. And Ambassador Daniel Hayes knew it. The room stared at him. Waiting. Expecting an explanation. Demanding answers. President Alaron spoke first. What exactly is Protocol Atlas? Daniel remained silent. Not because he wanted to be mysterious. Because there was no simple answer. How did one explain centuries of preparation? How did one summarize generations of sacrifice? How did one explain a secret that entire civilizations had died protecting? Finally he looked up. The reason humanity survived. The words settled heavily over the chamber. Several delegates frowned. Others exchanged confused looks. Councillor Saren stepped forward. You speak as though humanity faced something similar before. Daniel's expression darkened. No. His answer surprised her. Nothing similar. Then he added quietly, something worse. Silence followed. The statement sounded impossible. The Void Dominion was destroying civilizations by the hour. What could possibly be worse? Daniel turned toward the central holographic display. With a few commands, he linked Earth's historical archives to the Council network. Thousands of encrypted files appeared. Many carried classifications older than the Galactic Council itself. That alone shocked several intelligence officials. Humanity had only entered the galactic stage a little over a century ago. How could records this old exist? Daniel selected one. The file opened. The chamber lights dimmed. A recording appeared. Ancient Earth. Cities burning beneath dark skies. Buildings collapsing. Aircraft screaming overhead. Explosions illuminating entire horizons. The delegates watched in stunned silence. What conflict is this? Asked Saren. Daniel answered softly. One of them. The recording continued. Soldiers moved through rubble. Families hid underground. Entire nations fought each other. The devastation was horrifying. The delegates had studied warfare. They understood conflict. But this felt different. Personal. Intimate. Raw. The destruction wasn't happening on distant colonies. It was happening on humanity's own homeworld. Again. And again. And again. Another recording appeared. Then another. Then another. Different centuries. Different wars. Different technologies. The same suffering. The same determination.
Millions dead.
Then billions. The chamber became eerily quiet. Several delegates couldn't look away. Others wished they could. You did this to yourselves? Whispered one representative. Daniel nodded. Repeatedly. Nobody knew how to respond. Most galactic civilizations had experienced a single unification conflict. Perhaps 2. Humanity seemed to have endured hundreds. The realization was unsettling. The species that everyone considered young and inexperienced had survived an endless cycle of catastrophe. Not once. Not twice. Over and over again. A military historian from the Council archives suddenly stood. His face had gone pale. "I've reviewed human public records." Daniel glanced toward him. The historian continued. "Those wars nearly destroyed your civilization. Yes. And yet you survived. Yes." The historian looked genuinely confused. "Why?" For the first time, Daniel smiled. Not proudly. Not arrogantly. Sadly. "Because we didn't have a choice." The answer echoed through the chamber. Humanity hadn't survived because they were stronger. They survived because failure meant extinction. And extinction had never been acceptable. The recordings continued. Each revealed another lesson. Another scar. Another sacrifice. Humanity had learned to rebuild after collapse. Adapt after defeat. Prepare after every disaster. While many galactic civilizations experienced long eras of peace, humans had spent centuries planning for worst-case scenarios. It had become part of their culture, part of their psychology, part of their identity. Then Daniel opened another archive. The title alone drew attention. The Great Silence Investigation Council analysts immediately leaned forward. That wasn't a military document. It was a scientific one. "What is this?" asked Saren. Daniel took a breath. A project initiated 300 years ago. The archive opened. Ancient star maps appeared. Regions beyond explored space. Areas no one had paid attention to. At first the data seemed ordinary. Then patterns emerged. Missing civilizations. Dead systems. Unexplained disappearances. Entire regions becoming silent. The same regions Fleet Admiral Corvin had shown earlier. The same regions now consumed by the Void Dominion. The chamber slowly understood. Humanity had been watching. 4 centuries. Councillor Saren's eyes widened. "You knew." Daniel shook his head. "No." Then he pointed toward the data. "We suspected." A crucial difference. Humanity had never known what was coming. But they had recognized the warning signs. Most species dismissed the anomalies. Humanity investigated them. Most species assumed safety. Humanity planned for danger. Most species prepared for prosperity. Humanity prepared for survival. The room became quiet again. A new realization was forming. One far more disturbing than before. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, or their economy, or their military. Perhaps it was something much simpler. Humans expected disasters. And because they expected them, they prepared. Daniel closed the archives. The burning cities vanished. The war recordings disappeared. The chamber returned. But the atmosphere had changed. Nobody was laughing now. Nobody was mocking Earth. For the first time, the Galactic Council was seeing humanity clearly. Not as newcomers. Not as weaklings. Not as harmless traders. But as survivors. A species forged by hardship. A species that had spent centuries preparing for nightmares. Then a communication officer suddenly gasped. Every head turned. "What is it?" The officer pointed toward a sensor display. His hands trembled. Unknown transmissions. Dozens of screens illuminated. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Across the galaxy. Signals were appearing everywhere. Encrypted. Hidden. Ancient. Sleeping networks awakening. Deep space relays activating. Forgotten satellites coming online. Dark communication nodes emerging from silent systems. One after another. One after another. Like stars awakening in the night. The Council watched in stunned silence as the signal spread. Not through one sector. Not through 10. But across dozens of star systems. Entire regions of space were suddenly responding to the message Daniel had sent. Protocol Atlas. No one knew what they were looking at. No one knew how large it was. No one knew what would happen next. But one thing had become terrifyingly clear. Humanity had been preparing for this day far longer than anyone had imagined. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, hidden assets were beginning to wake up. The signals kept spreading. Across the Galactic Council chamber, hundreds of displays flickered with new activity. System after system lit up. Sector after sector awakened. The delegates watched in stunned silence as hidden networks emerged from places that should have contained nothing at all. Deep space relay stations, ancient listening posts, dormant communication arrays, facilities buried inside asteroid fields, installations hidden within rogue planets. Entire chains of infrastructure appeared across the galactic map, and every one of them carried the same signature. Human. Councillor Saren stared at the display. How many are there? The communication officer looked overwhelmed. His scanners were struggling to process the data. We don't know. The answer made several delegates uneasy. That answer was becoming disturbingly common. The Void Dominion couldn't be counted. Humanity's hidden network couldn't be counted. The galaxy suddenly felt much larger than anyone had imagined. Far more dangerous. Far more complicated. Daniel Hayes remained silent. Watching. Waiting. As though the real reveal hadn't happened yet. And it hadn't. Not even close. Thousands of light years away from the council chamber, something moved. A barren star system drifted in silence.
No inhabited worlds.
No trade routes. No strategic value. Nothing but frozen rock and darkness. At least, that was what every galactic survey had reported. For nearly 2 centuries. Then Protocol Atlas arrived. A signal crossed the void. Encrypted. Authenticated. Recognized. Deep beneath the surface of a lifeless moon, ancient machinery awakened. Power-flooded systems that had slept for generations. Massive blast doors trembled. Warning lights illuminated endless corridors. Automated voices echoed through abandoned chambers. Atlas authorization confirmed. Emergency readiness protocol active. Defense Group Sigma awakening. Entire mountains began to move. The moon cracked apart. Not naturally. Mechanically. Gigantic sections of rock separated and drifted away. What emerged beneath them was not a mining facility. Not a research station. Not a colony. It was a warship. A colossal warship. Kilometers long. Hidden inside a moon. Sleeping for over a century. Its engines ignited. For the first time in generations, Defense Group Sigma entered active service. And it was not alone. Another hidden system awakened. Then another. Then another. Throughout the galaxy, impossible things emerged from impossible places. Gas giants split apart to reveal concealed shipyards. Asteroid belts opened like mechanical flowers. Artificial stars deactivated camouflage fields. Entire fleets emerged from locations every galactic map labeled empty. Council analysts watched the reports arrive. Their expressions shifted from confusion to disbelief to shock. Fleet Admiral Corvin was among the first to understand the scale. His face slowly paled.
No.
One of the officers looked toward him. Admiral? Corvin pointed toward the tactical display. His hand trembled. Count them. The officer obeyed. Several minutes passed. Then more. The numbers kept increasing. Hundreds. Thousands. Tens of thousands. The calculations restarted repeatedly because the systems assumed they were malfunctioning. Eventually the final estimate appeared. The officer simply stared at it. Unable to speak. Report, Corvin ordered. The officer swallowed. Then whispered. There are over 43,000 confirmed warships. The chamber exploded with reactions. 43,000. That number alone was absurd.
Impossible.
No civilization possessed a fleet that size. No civilization could afford it. No civilization needed it. Yet the numbers kept rising. Because new fleets were still being discovered. High Chancellor Vorthak slowly stood. The giant Drakari leader looked genuinely stunned. The same being who once laughed at humanity. The same being who believed Earth possessed a token defense force. Now he stared at the tactical map as though seeing a ghost. Those numbers can't be accurate. Daniel finally spoke. They are. Vorthak looked directly at him. When were these fleets built? Over time. Over how much time? Daniel considered the question. Then answered honestly. Almost 200 years. The room became silent. 200 years. Humanity had been constructing warships in secret for 2 centuries. Not months. Not years. Generations. Entire generations. While the galaxy celebrated peace. while empires competed economically, while politicians argued over trade routes. Humanity had quietly prepared. The realization unsettled everyone, not because Earth had hidden a military, but because they had hidden it successfully. 4 centuries. How? No intelligence agency had detected it. No spy network had exposed it. No government had suspected it. Counselor Saren looked at Daniel. What exactly were you preparing for? The human's eyes drifted toward the advancing black stain representing the Void Dominion. His answer was soft. This. No one spoke after that, because for the first time, humanity's caution no longer seemed paranoid. It seemed justified. The tactical display continued updating. Human fleets appeared everywhere. Battle groups.
Carrier formation.
Logistics chains. Reserve fleets. Planetary defense networks. Emergency reinforcement groups. Each discovery shocked the Council further. Eventually the impossible became undeniable. Fleet Admiral Corvin compared the numbers. Then checked them again. Then a third time. Finally he turned toward President Alaron. The figures are correct. The President looked exhausted. Meaning? Corvin took a breath. Even saying it felt unreal. The human fleet. He paused. The chamber waited. Is larger than the combined military forces of the entire Galactic Council. No one moved. No one spoke. No one even seemed capable of breathing. Because the statement rewrote everything. Everything they believed. Everything they assumed. Everything they knew about humanity. The weakest military power in the chamber. Had never been weak. Not once. Not ever. They had simply chosen not to reveal themselves. Then another alert appeared. This one came from the front lines. A long-range surveillance platform near the advancing Void Dominion. The observation drone transmitted new sensor data. Immediately the chamber focused on the report. The enormous enemy formation continued moving through space. System after system fell before it. Yet something had changed. The analysts noticed it first. Then Corvin. Then Saren. Then everyone else. The Void Dominion fleet was adjusting its trajectory. The movement was subtle, but unmistakable. One of the technicians enlarged the display. Silence spread through the room. The enemy formation was no longer heading directly toward its original objective. It was turning, reacting, responding to something. A cold feeling spread through the chamber. President Alaron stared at the updated calculations. What are they doing? No one answered immediately. The tactical computers finished processing the data. Then the truth appeared. The largest vessel within the enemy armada. The Dominion flagship. A ship larger than cities. Larger than moons. The command vessel leading the invasion itself. Had changed course. Its sensors had detected humanity's awakening fleets. And for the first time since the invasion began. The Void Dominion was paying attention. The flagship turned toward the human fleet. The moment the Void Dominion flagship changed course, every military command center under human control shifted into full combat readiness. Across dozens of star systems, warning lights illuminated command decks.
Fleet formation adjusted.
Weapons systems awakened. Long-range sensors focused on the approaching enemy. For the first time since Protocol Atlas had been activated, humanity and the Void Dominion were actively watching each other. Predator staring at predator. And neither side blinked. 3 light-years beyond the ruined Carthan frontier, Task Force Aegis emerged from hyperspace. The formation consisted of 27 human warships. Not enough to challenge the Dominion Armada. Not even close. That wasn't their mission. They were scouts. Observers. Their purpose was simple. Learn. Humanity had survived its own history because it never fought blind. Before winning a war, you had to understand it. Admiral Sarah Mitchell stood on the bridge of the battleship Resolute. The bridge was quiet. Not calm. Focused. A difference every veteran understood. The holographic display before her showed the remains of a once-inhabited system. A dead sun glowed weakly in the darkness. Shattered planets drifted through space. Broken stations floated silently among debris fields. Nothing moved. Nothing lived. Mitchell studied the image. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Life signs. A sensor officer checked his console. His expression darkened. None. Any ships? None. Mitchell frowned. The reports claimed this system once housed over 6 billion civilians. 6 billion. Now there was nothing. No refugee traffic. No emergency broadcasts.
No escape vessels.
Just silence. The kind of silence humans instinctively feared. What happened here? Nobody answered. Because nobody knew. Hours later, they found the first clue.
A ruína orbital platform.
Half destroyed. Drifting aimlessly through space. Human boarding teams entered carefully. Weapons ready. The interior resembled a tomb. Dark corridors stretched endlessly. Emergency lights flickered weakly. The station's inhabitants were gone. Not dead. Gone. Entire residential sections stood abandoned. Meals remained on tables. Children's belongings lay scattered across classrooms. Medical centers sat empty. The scene disturbed the boarding teams more than bodies would have, because it suggested something impossible. Millions of people had vanished. Instantly. Without warning. Without resistance. Lieutenant Elena Reyes slowly walked through one of the abandoned habitation sectors. She stopped beside a small room. A family residence. The toys were still there. Personal photographs. Decorations. Signs of ordinary lives. The normal lives of people who expected tomorrow to arrive. Reyes swallowed hard. Commander. Her voice sounded quieter than usual. You're going to want to see this. Minutes later, investigators gathered around a data terminal. Miraculously, part of the station's surveillance system still functioned. The final recordings began playing. Everyone watched. Nobody spoke. The footage showed normal station activity. Families. Workers. Children. Routine life. Then alarms activated. Panic spread. People began running. The image distorted. Static filled the screen. And then... darkness. Not metaphorical darkness.
Actual darkness.
A moving shadow. A living void. It flowed through corridors like liquid night. Every person it touched disappeared. Not killed. Not wounded. Simply erased. The footage ended. Nobody moved. Lieutenant Reyes felt sick. What was that? No one knew. But every person in the room understood one thing. This enemy wasn't normal. The discoveries grew worse. Far worse. Human reconnaissance teams explored system after system. Everywhere they found the same pattern. Not conquest. Consumption. Entire civilizations removed. Their infrastructure stripped. Their populations gone. Their worlds hollowed out. One recovered database changed everything. The data came from a civilization unknown to the Galactic Council. A species that had existed beyond explored space. Their final records described the enemy. The translations were incomplete. Damaged. Fragmented. Yet one message survived. The recording played before Admiral Mitchell and her senior officers. A terrified alien voice echoed through the chamber. We believed they wanted territory. Static. We believed they wanted resources. More static. Then a sound no translator could identify. Perhaps weeping. Perhaps fear. Then the final words. We were wrong. The recording cut briefly. Returned. They do not conquer. Silence. The voice trembled. They consume. The transmission ended forever. The room became still. No one needed further explanation. Because humanity's investigators were already seeing the evidence. The Dominion wasn't building an empire. It wasn't establishing colonies. It wasn't expanding borders. It was feeding. On civilizations. On populations. On entire species. The realization chilled everyone. Human history contained monsters. Dictators. Genocidal regimes. Mass murderers. But even humanity had never encountered anything like this. The reports flowed back to the Galactic Council. Delegates listened in horror. Several representatives openly broke down during the briefings.
Millions dead.
Then billions. Then numbers so large they stopped feeling real. Entire civilizations erased before anyone even knew they existed. Councillor Saren stared at one report for several minutes, unable to process it. How many worlds? The analyst hesitated, then answered. At least 400 confirmed. The chamber fell silent. 400 worlds. Gone. Not conquered. Not occupied. Gone. And that was only what they had found. Nobody knew the true number. The uncertainty itself was terrifying. Yet the worst discovery arrived last. Human deep-range reconnaissance probes pushed beyond the current battlefield. Far beyond the Dominion advance force. Far beyond every known contact point. Searching for answers. Searching for origins. One probe succeeded. Its final transmission reached Admiral Mitchell's flagship hours later. The data package was heavily damaged. But enough survived. A star map appeared. At first it looked ordinary. Then analysts began calculating distances. The room grew quiet. Mitchell leaned forward. What am I looking at? A sensor specialist slowly raised his eyes. Fear filled them. Not panic. Not shock. Fear. The kind experienced by professionals when they discover something truly catastrophic. The specialist enlarged the image. Countless energy signatures appeared.
Fleet formation.
Military concentrations. Endless formations stretching into deep space. Mitchell immediately understood.
No.
The specialist nodded. His voice barely rose above a whisper. The fleet attacking us. He paused. The room waited. Isn't the invasion? Silence. The data continued scrolling. More formations appeared. Then more. Then more. The scale became impossible to comprehend. Every estimate grew larger. Every calculation became worse. Finally, the specialist forced himself to speak. The Dominion force we've been fighting is only an advance force. No one breathed. No one moved. Because they already knew what came next. The sensor officer enlarged the final section of the map. The darkness beyond known space seemed alive. Filled with movement. Filled with warships. Filled with something vast enough to terrify entire civilizations. His hands trembled. A far larger armada. The words felt heavy. Is approaching from deep space. And suddenly, the enemy they feared no longer looked unstoppable. It looked small. Compared to what was coming. The room remained silent long after the report ended. No one moved. No one spoke. Across the Galactic Council chamber, the faces of hundreds of delegates reflected the same emotion. Shock. Not because the void Dominion existed. Not because civilizations had already died. Not even because a larger armada was approaching. The shock came from something far more unsettling. Humanity didn't seem surprised. The revelation hung over the chamber like a storm cloud. For centuries, the galaxy had viewed humans as ambitious newcomers. Young, creative, adaptable, but ultimately inexperienced. Now that illusion was collapsing. Because every new discovery suggested the same impossible truth. Humanity had seen this coming. Somehow. Some way. Long before anyone else. Councillor Saren finally broke the silence. She stood slowly from a seat. Her silver eyes locked onto Daniel Hayes. The human ambassador looked exhausted now. Not frightened. Not triumphant. Simply tired. As if carrying the weight of an old burden. A question, Ambassador. Daniel nodded. Ask. Saren glanced toward the massive tactical display. The map showed the approaching Dominion advance force. Beyond it, hidden in darkness, lurked something vastly larger. Something no one wanted to imagine. Then she looked back at the human. When did humanity know? The chamber became still. Everyone wanted the answer. Daniel looked away briefly. Toward the stars visible beyond the council chamber's transparent walls. For a moment he seemed lost in memory. Then he spoke. 283 years ago. The room froze. Several delegates thought they had misheard him. Nearly 3 centuries? That was impossible. Humanity had not even joined galactic civilization at that time. President Alaron leaned forward. What happened? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he activated another archive. A classified file appeared. Its security markings were older than many governments currently represented in the chamber. The title appeared. Archaeological Expedition 14. Confused murmurs spread throughout the room. Archaeology. What did archaeology have to do with the Void Dominion? The archive opened. A barren world appeared on the display. Grey skies. Dead oceans. Shattered continents. The planet looked ancient, abandoned, lifeless. Daniel pointed toward it. Human explorers found this world while mapping deep space routes. The delegates watched carefully. At first nothing seemed unusual. Then the images zoomed closer. Massive ruins emerged. Cities. Entire megacities. Stretching beyond the horizon. The scale was breathtaking. Whatever civilization built them had been powerful. Extremely powerful. Yet there was no sign of life.
No descendants.
No records. Nothing. Counselor Saren frowned. What species lived there? Daniel answered quietly. We never found out. That answer disturbed everyone. Entire civilizations did not simply vanish. Not advanced ones. Not civilizations capable of building worlds like this. Yet this one had. The archive continued. More worlds appeared. Another dead civilization. Then another. Then another. Scattered across unexplored regions of space. Thousands of light years apart. Different architectures. Different technologies. Different species. All gone. All extinct. All erased. The room grew colder. A pattern was emerging. And everyone could see it. Fleet Admiral Corvin slowly crossed his arms. What connected them? Daniel activated another image. This one changed everything. The remains of a fleet. Not merely destroyed. Obliterated. Thousands of warships frozen in place around a dead star. The vessels belonged to dozens of different species. Former enemies. Former rivals. Former empires. All gathered together. All fighting the same battle. The final battle. A battle they had lost. The delegates stared in disbelief. Ancient enemies had united. Why? Against what? Daniel zoomed toward a section of wreckage. Deep scars marked the hull. Scars unlike anything in known space. Council scientists immediately began comparing the damage patterns. Within seconds, the results appeared. A perfect match. The same weapon signatures currently used by the Void Dominion. Gasps echoed throughout the chamber. Several delegates physically stepped backward.
No.
Whispered Saren. Daniel nodded. Yes. The room became deathly quiet. Humanity had discovered evidence centuries ago. Evidence that another civilization-ending invasion had occurred. Evidence that entire species had fought together against a common enemy. Evidence that they had failed. And no one else had known. No one else had cared. Because no one else had looked. President Alaron slowly sat back in his chair. The implications were staggering. You concluded they would return. Daniel shook his head. Not immediately. The distinction mattered. Humans hadn't predicted the exact date. They hadn't possessed perfect information. But they had recognized a pattern. And humanity had learned long ago that patterns mattered. Especially dangerous ones. We couldn't prove it. Daniel continued. We couldn't convince anyone. Images of Earth's early warnings appeared. Scientific papers. Research projects. Risk assessments. Predictions. All ignored. All dismissed. All criticized. Many human leaders hadn't believed it either. The theory sounded ridiculous. Ancient galaxy-killing invaders? Civilizations disappearing in deep space? Most people preferred optimistic explanations. Safer explanations. Comfortable explanations. But some humans remained unconvinced. And those humans remembered something fundamental about their species. Hope was important. Preparation was survival. Daniel's voice softened. So we prepared anyway. The chamber listened. Captivated. Humanity had spent generations investing resources into something that might never happen. Building hidden fleets. Constructing secret infrastructure. Creating contingency plans. Maintaining readiness. Not because they knew disaster was coming. Because they knew disaster was possible. That difference changed everything. Counselor Saren stared at the human ambassador. A realization struck her. Most species prepared for prosperity. Humans prepared for failure. Most civilizations built monuments to celebrate peace. Humans built safeguards against war. Most governments planned for the future they wanted. Humanity planned for the future they feared. The thought was deeply unsettling. And deeply admirable. Then another alarm sounded. The tactical map updated again. Immediately the chamber's attention shifted. Sensor data from the deep-range probes continued arriving. More information. More calculations. More answers. The analysts began processing the new figures. Their expressions changed rapidly. Confusion. Concern. Fear. Then outright disbelief. Fleet Admiral Corvin noticed first. "What is it?" No one answered immediately. Several officers rechecked the calculations. Then checked them again. The numbers remained unchanged. One analyst finally looked up. His face had gone pale. "Admiral." Corvin stepped closer. The analyst swallowed hard. The previous estimate was wrong. A terrible silence filled the room. Wrong? How? The analyst enlarged the deep space map. Countless new contacts appeared. Endless formations emerging from the darkness beyond explored space. The display expanded. Then expanded again. And again. The room watched in horror. The armada seemed limitless. Entire sectors of space were filled with movement. Military formations stretching farther than sensors could accurately measure. The analyst's voice trembled. We believed the approaching force was larger than the advance fleet. Nobody spoke. The pause felt endless. Then came the final revelation. The one that stole the air from the chamber. The one that transformed fear into something worse. The analyst forced the words out. The approaching armada. His hand shook. Is hundreds of times larger than we expected. And for the first time since Protocol Atlas began. Even the humans looked concerned. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. Not rumors. Not speculation. Fact. The approaching Dominion Armada was far larger than anyone had imagined. Entire civilizations stopped what they were doing. Factories fell silent. Governments entered emergency session. Families gathered together. Across thousands of worlds, billions looked toward the stars and wondered the same question. Would there still be a tomorrow? For the first time in recorded galactic history, extinction felt real. Not theoretical. Not distant. Immediate. And rapidly approaching. The Galactic Capital transformed overnight. The shining world of Aurelian Prime had always been a symbol of stability. A place where wars ended. Where treaties were signed. Where civilizations celebrated peace. Now it became a fortress. Emergency evacuation protocols activated across the entire system. Civilian transports filled every available docking lane. Massive refugee convoys formed around orbital stations. Children boarded evacuation vessels. Families said painful goodbyes. Some knew they would never see each other again. Others refused to believe it. Yet everyone could feel the fear. The uncertainty. The weight of history pressing down upon them. Councillor Saren stood inside one of the evacuation terminals watching thousands of civilians board transport ships. A small Valari child clutched his mother's hand. His large silver eyes followed the military vessels gathering overhead. Will they protect us? The question was innocent. Simple. Yet it struck Saren harder than any speech. The mother hesitated. Then nodded. Yes. The child smiled. Satisfied. Saren wished she possessed that certainty. Because she had seen the reports. She knew what was coming. Above the capital system, humanity's hidden fleet assembled. The sight left seasoned military observers speechless. Warships emerged continuously from hyperspace. Thousands upon thousands of vessels. Battleships. Carriers. Interceptors. Defense platforms. Support fleets. Supply formations. The gathering force stretched across millions of kilometers. A steel wall forming between civilization and annihilation. Fleet Admiral Corvin stood inside the primary command center studying the tactical display. He had spent his entire life around military power. Yet even he struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. Humanity had not merely built a fleet. They had built an ecosystem of war. Every vessel supported another. Every formation covered a weakness. Every reserve had a purpose. The organization was staggering. Years of preparation. Decades of planning. Generations of discipline. All revealed at once. A young officer approached. Admiral, human deployment zones are complete. Corvin nodded. The officer hesitated. Then asked quietly, Do you think it's enough? The old commander stared at the approaching enemy markers. Thousands. Then millions. then numbers so large they lost meaning. He answered honestly, "I don't know." Aboard the battleship Resolute, Admiral Sarah Mitchell walked through the vessel's corridors. Crew members moved around her. Focused, professional, calm. Yet she could feel the tension beneath the surface. Every sailor knew the odds. Every Marine knew what was approaching. No one needed motivation. No one needed speeches. Because everyone understood the stakes. Mitchell entered one of the observation decks. Beyond the transparent armor glass, the human fleet stretched endlessly across the stars. A breathtaking sight. A terrifying one. Beside her stood Commander Elena Reyes, the same officer who had discovered evidence of the Dominion's true nature. Neither woman spoke for several moments. Eventually Reyes broke the silence. "Do you think we'll win?" Mitchell smiled faintly. It wasn't a confident smile. It wasn't meant to be. Wrong question. Reyes looked at her. The Admiral folded her hands behind her back. "We don't need to win." The younger officer frowned. Mitchell continued. "We need to hold." A subtle but important difference. Victory could come later. Survival came first. The realization settled heavily between them. Neither woman looked away from the stars. Across the fleet, similar conversations occurred. Human captains contacted families. Veterans recorded final messages. Young recruits faced their fears. Engineers worked endless shifts preparing ships. Medical crews stocked emergency supplies.
Pilots reviewed combat simulation.
Everyone had a job. Everyone had a role. Everyone contributed. Not because they believed themselves invincible. Because they understood responsibility. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for this day. Now the bill had come due. Back within the council chamber, political arguments had finally disappeared. No one cared about status anymore. No one cared about influence. The galaxy had become united through necessity. President Alaron stood beside Daniel Hayes overlooking the tactical displays. For a while neither spoke. Finally Alaron broke the silence. "I owe your people an apology." Daniel looked at him. The president sighed. "We mocked you." He glanced toward the assembled fleets. "We never understood." Daniel's expression softened. Most humans wouldn't have understood either. Alaron frowned. "What does that mean?" Daniel studied the tactical map. Thousands of human formations. Hidden reserves. Ancient contingency plans. All activating simultaneously. Then he answered. Protocol Atlas wasn't designed by one generation. The president listened. It was built by hundreds. The statement carried enormous weight. This fleet wasn't humanity's achievement alone. It belonged to countless people who had lived and died believing they might never see the threat they prepared for. Scientists, engineers, workers, soldiers, leaders, ordinary citizens. Entire generations sacrificing resources and comfort for a future they would never personally witness. Alaron slowly nodded. For the first time, he understood. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology. It was patience. Then another revelation emerged. One that even surprised some members of the council. A restricted human briefing appeared on the central display. The highest security classification yet seen. Several human officers exchanged nervous glances. Even Daniel became quiet. President Alaron noticed. "What is it?" No immediate answer came. The briefing slowly opened. Only a handful of individuals possessed authorization. Fleet Admiral Mitchell appeared via secure transmission. Her expression was serious. Since transparency is now required, the council should be informed. The room became silent. Mitchell took a breath. Then delivered the revelation. Humanity possesses one final contingency. Several delegates looked confused. Final contingency? The Admiral continued. It has never been activated. Even Daniel seemed uncomfortable hearing those words. Councillor Saren noticed immediately. If the humans were uneasy about this weapon. What exactly had they built? President Alaron asked the obvious question. What does it do? Mitchell hesitated. Long enough to concern everyone. Then she answered. We don't know. Shock spread throughout the room. The Admiral continued before anyone could interrupt. We know its intended purpose. Silence. We know its theoretical capabilities. Another pause. But it has never been tested. No one liked that answer. Not one bit. The briefing ended there. No further details.
No explanation.
Only uncertainty. A final weapon. Untouched. Unproven. Waiting. Like humanity itself had been waiting. 4 centuries. Then the alarms began. Every display turned crimson. Every sensor network activated simultaneously. Across the capital system, military crews rushed to stations. Human formations shifted. Weapons armed. Shields activated. The stars themselves seemed to darken. A technician stared at his console. His face drained of color. They are here. The words echoed through the command center. Long-range sensors updated. Then updated again. And again. The numbers climbed faster than computers could process. Hyperspace distortion spread across the edge of the system. Massive. Endless. Terrifying. The Dominion Super Armada had arrived. And as billions watched from worlds, stations, and ships throughout the galaxy, the first wave emerged from deep space. The first wave emerged from hyperspace. And every prediction model immediately failed. Across the command decks of thousands of ships, officers stared at sensor readings that no longer seemed real. The darkness at the edge of the Galactic Capital system tore open. Not in one place. Not in 10 places. Everywhere. Space itself appeared to fracture. Massive wounds opened across the stars. From those wounds came the Void Dominion. The first ships emerged. Then thousands. Then tens of thousands. Then numbers so vast that tactical displays stopped showing individual vessels and began marking entire regions of space as hostile. A wall of darkness stretched from horizon to horizon. The sight silenced everyone. Veteran soldiers. Experienced admirals. Political leaders. Even the civilians watching emergency broadcasts throughout the galaxy. Nobody had ever imagined a fleet that large. Entire civilizations could have lived inside that armada. And behind it came more. Still more. Endless. Relentless. Like a living storm consuming the stars. Aboard the Resolute, Admiral Sarah Mitchell stood motionless. The bridge remained silent. Every officer waited. Not for orders. For her. The responsibility resting on her shoulders was almost impossible to comprehend. Billions of lives. Thousands of worlds. The survival of civilization itself. Everything depended upon what happened next. Mitchell slowly exhaled. Then she spoke. Begin Phase 1. Immediately the fleet moved. Not one fleet. Every fleet. Across millions of kilometers, human formations shifted simultaneously. Thousands of commanders executed pre-planned maneuvers. Carrier groups repositioned. Defense screens expanded. Interceptors launched. Heavy battleships advanced. Support vessels moved into protected corridors. The synchronization was breathtaking. Council observers watched in astonishment.
No delays. No confusión. No hesitation.
It looked less like separate fleets and more like a single living organism. One enormous mind stretching across the battlefield. Fleet Admiral Corvin stared at the display. How are they coordinating that? A human operations officer answered. Practice. Corvin blinked. Practice? The officer nodded. For 170 years. The old admiral suddenly understood. Humanity hadn't simply built ships. They had rehearsed this war. 4 generations. The Dominion attacked first. Thousands of violet beams erupted from the darkness. The same weapons that had erased entire fleets. The same weapons that had crushed every civilization they encountered. The battlefield exploded. Energy crossed impossible distances. Stars seemed to ignite. Several council delegates flinched, expecting devastation. Instead, something unexpected happened. The human fleet moved. Not after the attack. Before it. Entire formations shifted milliseconds ahead of impact. Warships rolled. Accelerated. Changed vectors. Adjusted positions. The incoming fire struck empty space. Gasps filled the council chamber. Even Dominion formations appeared to hesitate. Their opening attack had failed. For the first time since the invasion began. Failed. The battle intensified instantly. Human railgun batteries opened fire. Thousands of projectiles accelerated to relativistic velocity. Missile swarms followed. Electronic warfare systems activated.
Drone formation déployée.
Decoy networks expanded. Countermeasure fields erupted. The battlefield transformed into controlled chaos. Every human formation seemed to fight differently. One fleet favored long-range bombardment. Another relied upon mobility. Another used drone saturation. Another focused entirely on electronic disruption. Council analysts struggled to understand what they were seeing. Why are their doctrines different? An officer answered. Because they're supposed to be. The analyst looked confused. The human continued. If the enemy learns one strategy. Realization struck. They can't learn them all. The Dominion adapted.
Fast. Terrifyingly fast. Enemy formation shifted.
New attack patterns emerged. Countermeasures appeared. Several human tactics immediately became less effective. Yet something even stranger happened. Humanity adapted faster. The moment a strategy lost effectiveness, another appeared. Then another. Then another. Entire battle groups changed operational doctrine in real time. Weapons were repurposed.
Fleet formation reconfigured.
Command structures adjusted. Nothing remained static. Nothing remained predictable. Admiral Mitchell watched reports flood her command console. Enemy adaptation detected. Human response deployed. Enemy counterresponse detected. Human variation deployed. Again. 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 The cycle accelerated. The battlefield became a contest of evolution. A contest the Dominion wasn't winning. Deep inside the enemy armada, ancient prediction systems processed data. Calculations ran continuously. Analyzing. Learning. Predicting. For countless civilizations, those systems had guaranteed victory. Every opponent followed patterns. Every species fought according to established logic. Every civilization became predictable eventually. Humanity did not. Every time the Dominion adapted, humans changed. Every time the Dominion learned, the lesson became obsolete. Every time the enemy believed they understood human strategy, the strategy evolved. The prediction engines began generating contradictory forecasts. Then impossible forecasts. Then complete failures. For the first time in their history, the Dominion could not accurately predict their opponent. The battle reached its third hour. Casualties mounted. Human ships burned. Entire formations disappeared. Heroes died anonymously. Engineers held reactors together with failing systems. Pilots flew damaged craft into impossible situations. Medical teams worked without rest. The cost was enormous. Yet the line held. Against all probability. Against all logic. The line held. Councillor Saren watched one recording in silence. A human destroyer had lost engines. Lost shields. Lost communications. Still it remained in position. Still it protected the evacuation corridor behind it. The vessel eventually exploded. But not before hundreds of civilian transports escaped. Saren lowered her eyes. Humanity wasn't fighting because victory was guaranteed. They were fighting because someone had to. And that realization changed how the galaxy saw them forever. Then another report arrived. The Dominion's advance had slowed. Actually slowed. For the first time. Cheers erupted across command centers. Across evacuation fleets. Across worlds watching the battle. Hope appeared. Small. Fragile. But real. The impossible was happening. Humanity wasn't winning. Not yet. But they were stopping the enemy. The Dominion advance stalled. Then halted. The battlefield entered a brief and eerie lull. A pause. A breath. A moment of uncertainty. Something was changing. Everyone could feel it. Admiral Mitchell noticed first. Enemy formations were withdrawing. Not retreating. Reorganizing. Making room. Space opened within the center of the Dominion Armada. Thousands of vessels moved aside. Then tens of thousands. Creating a corridor. A path.
A cérémonial passage.
The sight sent chills through every observer. What are they doing? No one answered. Sensor operators focused every available scanner toward the opening. The darkness deepened. The stars disappeared behind it. Something enormous approached. Far larger than any vessel yet encountered. Far larger than the flagship. Far larger than cities. Far larger than reason. The object emerged slowly, deliberately, as though it knew everyone was watching, as though it wanted them to watch. Shock spread through every command center, every fleet, every world. The thing entering the battlefield was not merely a warship. It was a throne, a moving fortress, a monument to conquest, a symbol of extinction itself. The Dominion formations immediately changed behavior. Every vessel aligned toward it. Every formation acknowledged its arrival, like worshippers greeting a god. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Then a new signal appeared across every human sensor network. Unknown origin, unknown language, unknown source. Yet somehow every translation system rendered the same meaning. One message, one declaration, one warning. The Dominion leader had arrived, and had personally entered the battlefield. The signal from the Dominion leader echoed across the battlefield. Every ship received it. Every command center heard it. Every civilization watched. And for several long seconds, nothing happened. The colossal throne ship drifted at the center of the Dominion armada, larger than moons, surrounded by countless warships, protected by the force that had erased hundreds of civilizations. Its presence alone seemed to darken the stars, a symbol of absolute power, a symbol of inevitable extinction. The Dominion had never known defeat, never known resistance on this scale, never encountered an enemy that survived this long. And now their leader had entered the battlefield personally. Humanity's response was silence. Not fear, not surrender. Silence. Admiral Sarah Mitchell stood aboard the Resolute staring at the tactical display. The final contingency authorization rested before her, waiting. For centuries it had remained locked, untouched, unproven. A weapon designed for the worst day imaginable. A weapon built by generations who hoped it would never be needed. That day had arrived. The bridge crew watched her. No one spoke. Everyone understood what this meant. Mitchell slowly activated the encrypted command sequence. The screen changed. A message appeared. Atlas Omega authorization required her heartbeat slowed. The weight of history settled onto her shoulders. Then she entered the code. Authorization confirmed. The computer's voice sounded strangely calm, almost gentle. Activating final contingency. Across human space, hidden systems awakened. Again. But this time the galaxy witnessed something entirely different. Deep beneath dead worlds, massive structures emerged. Inside forgotten asteroid belts. Ancient mechanisms activated. At the edges of explored space. Entire installations powered online. Council sensors immediately detected the activity. Analysts rushed to identify what they were seeing. No one succeeded. The structures did not resemble weapons. They resembled machines. Gigantic machines. Older than many governments. Older than entire civilizations. Councillor Saren stared at the incoming data. What are those? Daniel Hayes looked toward the display. For the first time since the crisis began, genuine emotion crossed his face. Not confidence. Not determination. Respect. Respect for the countless people who had built what was about to happen. Humanity's last insurance policy. The answer explained nothing. Yet somehow it explained everything. Then the machines activated. The stars changed. Across dozens of systems, space itself began to distort. Gravity shifted. Energy surged. Massive rings of light formed in the darkness. The battlefield sensors immediately overloaded. Several Dominion vessels altered course. For the first time, uncertainty appeared within enemy formations. The invaders had seen countless technologies, countless civilizations, countless weapons. This was different. Very different. Something ancient was waking. Something humanity had spent centuries preparing. The rings expanded. Larger, brighter, more powerful. Then the impossible happened. Every human fleet suddenly moved. Not physically. Strategically. The entire battle changed shape. Dominion prediction systems attempted to respond. Attempted to calculate. Attempted to adapt. And failed. Again. Humanity wasn't merely fighting the battle. Humanity was rewriting it. The rings released their energy. A pulse swept across the battlefield. Silent. Invisible. Instantaneous. Every Dominion vessel reacted. Thousands lost formation. Millions of systems malfunctioned. Communication networks collapsed. Navigation arrays failed. Targeting systems became useless. Shock spread through enemy ranks. Human analysts immediately understood. The contingency had worked. Not because it destroyed ships. Because it destroyed certainty. 4 centuries humanity had studied one lesson repeatedly. Every war depended upon information. Take away information. Take away coordination. Take away control. And even the strongest force became vulnerable. The Dominion command structure began fracturing. Entire fleets lost contact. Battle groups drifted apart. Attack formations collapsed. For the first time in their history, the invaders experienced confusion. The human fleets attacked immediately. Not recklessly. Not emotionally. Professionally. Like a surgeon exploiting a weakness. Carrier groups surged forward. Strike wings penetrated fractured formations. Battleships concentrated fire. Missile swarms overwhelmed isolated targets. Every Dominion mistake became fatal. Every weakness became an opening. The battlefield transformed. Hours earlier humanity had been defending. Now they were advancing. Systematically. Relentlessly.
Dominion losses multiplied.
Then accelerated. Then exploded. Entire sectors of the enemy armada vanished from tactical displays. Council observers watched in disbelief. The impossible was becoming reality. The invincible enemy was losing. Aboard the throne ship, panic spread. Not among soldiers. Among commanders. Ancient beings who had never known fear. Never known uncertainty. Never known defeat. Now their prediction systems produced catastrophic forecasts. Every calculation ended the same way. Collapse. Annihilation. Extinction. The concept itself felt alien. One commander stared at the data. No civilization should possess this capability. Another answered. Humans prepared. The word sounded almost like a curse. Prepared. That single difference had changed everything. While the Dominion perfected conquest, humanity perfected survival. While the Dominion assumed superiority,
Humanity assumait danger.
while the Dominion believed itself unstoppable, humanity planned for failure. And because they planned for failure, they now possessed victory. Back within the council chamber, silence dominated the room. No one cheered. Not yet. The scale of what they were witnessing felt too enormous. President Alaron slowly looked toward Daniel Hayes. His voice barely rose above a whisper. You can destroy them. Daniel remained quiet. The answer itself was terrifying. Because everyone already knew it. Humanity possessed the capability. The fleets. The strategy. The contingency. The preparation. For the first time in history, the Void Dominion faced complete annihilation. Not defeat. Annihilation. The very fate they had inflicted upon countless civilizations. Now it waited for them. Then something unprecedented happened. Every battlefield transmission channel activated simultaneously. Human. Alien. Military. Civilian. Emergency. Diplomatic. All of them. A new signal appeared. Origin. Dominion throne ship. The chamber froze. Admiral Mitchell looked up. Daniel Hayes narrowed his eyes. Councillor Saren stopped breathing. The signal was authentic. Verified. Impossible to fake. The Dominion leader was transmitting. Personally. The message request appeared across every screen in the galaxy. Not a threat. Not a declaration. Not a demand. A request. One that stunned everyone who read it. Because for the first time in recorded history, the Masters of Extinction wanted to talk. The battlefield had fallen silent. Not completely. Damaged ships still drifted through the darkness. Rescue operations continued. Emergency signals echoed between the stars. But the war itself was over. The unstoppable Void Dominion had stopped. Across the galaxy, billions watched the transmission from the Dominion throne ship. Nobody spoke. Nobody looked away. The image that appeared was unlike anything anyone expected. The being on the screen did not resemble a conqueror. It did not resemble a god. It did not resemble the monster that had haunted civilizations for centuries. It looked tired. ancient, broken. Its dark eyes carried the weight of countless wars, countless victories, countless extinctions. And now, for the first time in its existence, fear. The Dominion leader looked directly into the transmission camera. For several moments, it struggled to speak, as though the words themselves were unfamiliar. Finally, it lowered its head. The gesture shocked everyone. It was submission, a surrender. We request cessation of hostilities. The translation echoed across the stars. Silence followed. The leader continued. Our fleets will withdraw. Its voice trembled slightly. We surrender. The words felt impossible. Entire civilizations had vanished before this enemy. Ancient empires had been erased. Hundreds of species had disappeared into history. Yet now the conquerors stood defeated. And they were asking for mercy. The very mercy they had never shown others. Inside the council chamber, nobody celebrated. The victory felt too costly, too significant, too important. President Alaron slowly turned toward Daniel Hayes. The human ambassador stood quietly beside the observation window, looking toward the stars, looking toward the battlefield, looking toward the countless ships that would never return home. Alaron finally asked the question everyone wondered. What happens now? The room became silent. Every delegate listened. Every camera focused on the human. Daniel thought about the question. Humanity possessed the power to finish this. The fleets were in position. The contingency remained active. The Dominion could be erased forever. The opportunity was real. The temptation was real. Yet Daniel remembered the lessons humanity had learned throughout its long history. Power alone never defined civilization. Choices did. Slowly, he looked toward the transmission. Then he answered. We accept the surrender. Shock spread throughout the chamber. Several delegates stared at him, unable to believe what they had heard. After everything the Dominion had done, humanity was showing mercy. Councillor Saren looked genuinely stunned. You would let them live? Daniel nodded. Yes. But why? The question carried genuine confusion. Daniel's answer came without hesitation. Because if victory turns us into monsters. His eyes drifted toward the stars. Then we never truly won. The chamber fell silent. No one had a response. Because everyone understood. Humanity's greatest strength had never been its hidden fleets. Never been Protocol Atlas. Never been the final contingency. Those things had saved the galaxy. But they weren't what made humanity extraordinary. The true difference was restraint. The ability to possess overwhelming power. And choose not to abuse it. The ability to destroy. And choose mercy instead. Hours later, the surrender was formally accepted. Dominion fleets began withdrawing beyond known space. The surviving civilizations of the galaxy watched in disbelief. The nightmare was ending. Worlds once marked for extinction would survive. Children who expected death would see tomorrow. Entire species would continue to exist. Because one civilization had prepared. Because one civilization refused to quit. Because one civilization stood its ground when everyone else believed the battle was hopeless. Humanity. The species they had mocked. The species they had underestimated. The species they had laughed at. Days later, the Galactic Council reconvened. The chamber looked different now. Not physically. Emotionally. The arrogance was gone. The divisions were gone. Something had changed. Every delegate stood as the human delegation entered. No announcement was required. No order was given. The gesture happened naturally. Respect. Pure and unquestionable respect. Daniel Hayes paused briefly, looking around the room. The same room where humanity had once been mocked. The same room where laughter had filled the air. Now there was only gratitude. President Alaron stepped forward. His voice carried throughout the chamber. For centuries, we judged strength by fleets. He looked toward the assembled delegates. We judged wisdom by age. He paused. We judged civilizations by appearances. The president turned toward the human ambassador, then bowed his head. A gesture no council president had ever performed. Not once. Today, the Galactic Council formally recognizes Earth as the civilization that saved the galaxy. The chamber erupted. Not with cheers. With applause. Hundreds of delegates. Hundreds of species. Standing together. Honoring the people who had protected them all. The applause continued for nearly a minute. Then finally faded. President Alaron looked across the chamber one last time. His gaze settled on the representatives who once laughed at humanity. Then he spoke the final words that would be remembered throughout history. Today we learned a lesson every civilization should remember. The room became completely silent. Alaron's voice echoed through the chamber. Never laugh at humanity. And beneath the distant stars they had fought so hard to protect.